Hello, Carol Taylor-Kearney here at Powell Arts, and I'm here with Nina Yocom, and we're standing in front of her beautiful painting. And Nina, can you please introduce us to the painting?
Sure. Hi, my painting is titled Offering. I am an alcohol ink artist. This is a very interesting medium that some people might not be terribly familiar with, but it is kind of an upcoming new medium that incorporates highly pigmented alcohol inks that allow for a flow of color and formulation that is quite unlike anything that I've done before, watercolor, acrylic, or any of those things. So the title of the piece is called Offering. The title came from what became an image of an entity. That's the best way I can describe this fellow here. And I began to see an outline of a figure holding his hand aloft, and then it became with a series of acrylic dots on top of the alcohol ink. I was able to, once it's dried, you're able to use fine liner pen or acrylic dotting, which I prefer to do, to give some accent. Once I started that accenting, I noticed that this hand needed to hold an offering. And that's when I started to use the acrylic silver dots in tiny, tiny, tiny detail, similar to what you would do with a mandala in dotting techniques. And that became a flowing, almost like a smoky offering.
That's exactly what it kind of comes around and twirls to look like, as though it is some kind of smoke. And I especially like how it not only, you have these dots that highlight the piece, but it looks like by nature there are these dots that seem to form here and here. And as I look at it more, I find more and more of these dots. Did the idea of the dots come from that, or you started to go and place the dots using your materials afterwards?
Afterwards. So the dotting technique I use, very often the alcohol ink image or abstract can stand alone, but to give it an additional dimensionality and some kind of what's the right word? To give it some additional interest and focus. These dotting, and each one of them is one dot at a time. I use a tiny metal tool that I dip into acrylic, just plain acrylic paint, and then I will dot one dot at a time. I like the precision of the placement of the dots to give it, like you were mentioning, some of the outline, such as the very, very detailed black dots, because I wanted to show that figure's face. He has a little eyeball there and a crooked nose. So I saw that and I was like, I really want to emphasize that outline. And the natural progression of the dotting just kind of, the piece actually called for the dots. They just needed to be placed where they were placed with this little dotting technique. And I have to be very careful about not overextending the dotting. I have to be,
yeah, because I can see it goes here, and then it kind of fades, and then it picks up. My eye wants to make that connection, and I'm glad for the edge, and yet the edge kind of disappears and then comes back.
Yes, and that was done intentionally. I did not want to outline the entire image. I wanted to allow for the kind of breathing, the kind of the floating. I didn't want to take too much away from the abstractness of this figure, of this entity.
And I love the little bits of blue that are in the background to give it a little more support. Do you find that they are, I'm calling them background, do you find that they're background that pushes this forward, or do you find that it tends to go and make you just want to, keeps you flat going from here to here to here to here?
And the precision of the color placement. With alcohol inks, you do use a manipulation of movement in order to work with the alcohol ink, and it dries very, very quickly. So the colors that you see, they become more fluid, and you can manipulate where you want a lighter color to be, or like a little bit of light blue here, a little bit light blue there, and then a harder, like darker, deeper pigmented, depending on how you flow and use a tool. I tend to use a heat tool that will push the alcohol ink color along.
Oh, a lot of people with encaustic do something similar.
Exactly, very similar.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Well, this is really intricate, and you telling me about the little dots, I just can't believe, so much minutia is in this, and yet the whole thing just comes together as though it was an organic thing that just kind of appeared. So I hope you come to see this piece at Powell Arts very soon, and bye.
Thank you. Perfect.